Hi, I am Grace Judson, and I am here as a self-proclaimed proud leadership geek on a mission to help new managers and supervisors succeed and become the leaders they want to be. Yay! And a big management challenge is, what do you do about an employee who's disrespectful? Maybe they're resentful that you got the promotion they were hoping for. Maybe they don't agree with your decisions or your management style, or maybe they're just generally cranky. Stick with me because I will cover some ideas and approaches to the problem here in this video. But first, for the most relevant, useful advice for new managers and supervisors who really do want to become good leaders, because management is not just about managing tasks, it is about leading people. So subscribe and hit the little notifications bell so you get informed every time I publish a new video, which is pretty much every week, every Wednesday, in fact. Okay, so you've got someone on your team who's been undercutting you in some way, maybe arguing with you, maybe going behind your back to talk with your boss about things that are going on, maybe gossiping about you with other members of your team. Well, by the end of this video, you will have some ways to nip this in the bud and get things back on track. And having been in management and leadership for over 16 years before I started my manager and supervisor training and coaching business in 2005, that's getting longer and longer ago. Funny how that happens. Anyway, I have helped a lot of my clients understand how to manage, supervise, and lead even when they are faced with employees who seem to be fighting them at every step of the way. So let's start by setting the stage just a little bit more, okay? Because sometimes with someone like this who seems to be fighting you every step of the way, you might even get to a point where you think you're imagining things, or maybe that it's not as bad as it seems. The resentful employee can be very passive aggressive. They can deliberately misunderstand what you've asked them to do. They can go over your head to talk with your boss without making it even really that obvious. You know, hey, we just passed each other in the hall. Maybe they're even trash talking you with your teammates. If you've ever heard the term gaslighting, it's when someone says or does things that make you feel like you're losing your mind, like you're the one who's wrong, not them. That is a classic technique of an employee who is passive aggressively resentful and disrespectful. So have you had to deal with someone like that? Maybe you even ended up thinking you really were the one who was wrong, and boy, can that ever undermine your confidence. What's the worst experience you've had or maybe witnessed with a disrespectful employee? I know I've had some trials and tribulations along this line myself. So, okay, whether it's that kind of subtle, passive-aggressive sort of disrespectful behavior, or it's more overt in directly talking back, what do you do? First priority, document what's happening. Write it down. This does two things. First, if it's the passive-aggressive behavior that can make you doubt your own sanity, when you write it down, you stop doubting. It becomes clear that this really is happening. It's right there in black and white on the page. Second, documenting the behavior is an essential first step before you take any kind of action. If you don't have documentation, which should include the date and time, what happened, and the names of anyone who was there as a witness, if you don't have that, you'll have a hard time having a discussion with the employee about their behavior. And if you end up having to go to your human resources department with the problem, they will need your documentation to help you take the necessary next steps. If this person is going over your head and talking to your boss should be referring them back to you to handle whatever it is. If they're not, if your boss isn't doing this, then I suggest having a conversation with your boss to ask that any questions or requests that this employee is making come back to you instead of going around you. Talking with the employee about their behavior is one of those it depends kinds of things. If they're passive-aggressive and gaslighting, then confronting them directly could very well end in frustration. Unless you have super clear and detailed documentation, they can look innocent, claim they have no idea what you're talking about, and insist that you've misunderstood their intentions. On the other hand, if they are openly defiant, and again, you have that documentation of times and situations, then having a closed door conversation with them is your next step in this. And I will come back to the passive aggressive problem in a minute. In this case, where they're openly and obviously talking back or disobeying and so on, you'll need to be very clear and very unemotional about the situation. This is what happened. This is unacceptable. You expect it to stop immediately. You don't need to discuss how it makes you feel. That is not relevant. There's some instruction out there, or there's some opinion out there, practices out there about saying, well, I feel like. That is not relevant as a manager. It really doesn't matter how you feel about what your employees are doing. What matters is whether or not they're doing the right things in the ways that you need them to do. Depending on the situation, you can tell them that if they disagree with you about something or have a problem of some sort, they can come to you privately to discuss it. But the openly defiant behavior has to stop. And if it continues after this conversation, you will probably need to go to your HR people and to your boss to enlist their help in resolving the situation. Okay, going back to the passive aggressive employee, which is probably one of the most challenging situations that you're going to face as a manager or supervisor. I mentioned that you probably won't have a lot of luck confronting them directly because their whole game is all about plausible deniability, being able to look innocent and deny all knowledge of what you're accusing them of doing. So what do you do? Here is a actually quite fun and very effective technique that I learned from the master negotiator Christopher Voss. He used to be the, wait for it, lead international hostage negotiator for the FBI. So as you might imagine, he's got some street cred on this question of negotiating and dealing with people who are hostile and just argumentative. He is now the head of his own negotiation consultancy and training company, and he is the author of this book, which I highly recommend, and I will include a link to the book on Amazon in the video description below. When you go down to look at the video description, you'll probably have to click on the little see more link in order to see all the links that I'm going to reference here. Voss talks about something called the no-oriented question, and the trick here is this employee is in no mode. They're not going to want to say yes to anything that you ask them or want them to do. So you give them the opportunity to say what they want to say, no, but in answer to a question that actually serves your purpose when they do say no. That is probably about as clear as mud. So let me give you some examples. Here's one. Is it unreasonable of me to expect you to follow through on what I've asked you to do? Am I crazy to think you should come to me first before going over my head to talk to my boss? Is it totally outrageous for me to expect you to double check with me before you tell the team what to do? And so on, right? You get the idea. If they say yes, they're agreeing that you're unreasonable, crazy, and outrageous. And no matter how disrespectful they might be, it's unlikely that they're going to go that far. But in saying no, they're actually agreeing with you that they should do these things that you're asking them about. And then you can follow up by saying, okay, then we agree that going forward you will, and you fill in the blank with whatever it is you just sneakily got them to agree with. Voss's book goes into a lot more detail on this and a bunch of other really fascinating and easy to use tools for negotiation, conflict management, and just general conversation. And I highly recommend it, as I said. One more thing I want to say here. When you have an employee who's being disrespectful, it is important for you to take a step back before you do anything else, even any of the things that I have outlined here. Is there something you are doing that is maybe not in your best interests as a manager or supervisor and a leader? If they don't like your management style or they disagree with you, yes, they should come to you directly instead of being disrespectful, but it is possible that they don't feel safe doing that. So double check your behavior, because it could be that, for instance, you're micromanaging unnecessarily, or at least they feel that way, or maybe showing some disrespect yourself. reality check what you're doing, and if necessary, make adjustments. Management is not about they should just do what you tell them to do. Management is about leading people and motivating them to do what they need to do in a way that helps them grow and develop and feel respected themselves. Being a good, effective manager and leader also means cultivating some self awareness so that you can lead in a way that works for everyone, for you, for your employer, and for your employees. Okay, with that said, if you want more on this type of employee, including some examples, some additional examples of those no-oriented questions, check out the ebook, The 5 Most Challenging Employees and How to Manage Them. The link is down there in the video description. Like I said a minute ago, you may need to click I think it says see more in order to pop the whole description open and find the links. And as always, if you like this video, please let me know. You can like it below. You can subscribe, that would be great, and you can share it with your colleagues. And it would be great if you have an aha moment in this or an insight that you would like to share or a question you'd like to ask. Post that in the comments and I will reply. Take care.